Welcome to Demming Chronicles Season 2. We chat with persons who give us some different ideas. Their ideas can make a difference to our future. It can even make a better future for us. Today's guests are Anya Ayoung-Chee. Fabian Carter is also our guest. Demming Chronicles Season 2. We'll be back with you shortly. Welcome back to Demming Chronicles and our guest, fashion designer and social entrepreneur, Anya Ayoung-Chee. Tell me, what about Trinidad and Tobago brings you joy?
Oh gosh. Well, Trinidad and Tobago being my home in a way that is beyond real sort of explanation, is a place that makes me feel as though I belong in a very special place to a very special people that have defined very much how I've done my work, how I see myself, how I see the world. And I do think that, in the words of Mia Motley, there's a cultural confidence that I've learned to treasure through being exposed to icons like Mei Ling and Peter Minshall, Wendell Manwaring, and Attila Springer. The conversations that I've been blessed to have by just being from this place and understand historically what we bring to the world. The joy that I feel is when we are in that most authentic place, when we come from that genuine cultural confidence and we bring that, through that lens, we bring our true magic to the world.
And Anya, we have on several occasions brought our magic to the world as you described it, but it's often not consistent. What do you think is responsible for that lack of consistency?
I do think, again, comes back to that lack of confidence that we often mirror ourselves against perceived greatness that's outside of us. And as a result, we vacillate between the moments where, or the people maybe who stand out as beacons, and maybe there's not as much of an acknowledgement that the reason they stand out is because they are showing up in their full Caribbean self. And the vast majority of the population, I think, still battling with an insecurity around how to show up that way. And so the inconsistency, I do think, is a product of too much adoption of something that is not ours in an effort to be seen outside of ourselves, when really being seen as ourselves is what really stands out.
That's a big issue that you've just raised, because that's a psychosocial issue, that we are not confident to show up in our authenticity. How can we change that? What would you do different?
I am actually working in a couple of spaces. One is called Nudge, which is an initiative, an entity now that I've co-founded alongside Massey, designed to, yes, enhance the capacity of SMEs in the region, but really through the lens of finding your music. There's a deep underlying sense, belief system for this program that once we individually find our music and we have the confidence to do so in a community, so much of this willingness to be confident and stay in confidence requires a sense of belonging. Too few of us, I think, who have stepped out to be in our full selves end up being outliers. And I think if being yourself becomes the norm and you find community around that, there's more sticking power to that methodology. And I've similarly co-founded an initiative called Who She Feels She Is, designed to bring visibility to women in leadership and to actually identify leadership as being born out of authenticity. And we've recognized that part of our work is forming community for those who feel that they don't belong because they have stepped out of the realm of the norm. So this idea of building community around authenticity, I think, is a powerful one.
Could you tell us a little more about Nudge?
Sure. Nudge is launched about 6 months ago officially. My partner is Julie Avey, who is SVP of People and Culture at Massey Group. And together we have forged a program that is three-tiered, designed to support people along the journey of entrepreneurship. Like I said, through the lens of really living one's music. And so it's a capacity building program that involves education, curriculum. It involves retail opportunity through our major partner, which is Massy Stores, but with the intention of expanding the distribution channels beyond Massy Stores as we grow, and supporting high impact entrepreneurs through funding, through a variety of capacity building programs. We have launched in Trinidad, we are soon to launch in Barbados and St. Lucia, and it's been an incredible journey, because there's really this idea of sort of dismantling the polarity between what we look at as big business and small business, and leveraging resources on both sides to create more of an ecosystem model, and really genuinely nudge people in all directions towards the symbiotic relationship between all these parties.
And if you had to look down the road 10 years and think of what Nudge would have achieved, what would the ecosystem look like with the impact of Nudge?
Gosh, I think hopefully even in less than 10 years, a regional movement towards an actively engaged small businesses who are living sustainably off of what they love to do. And that may be in services, that may be in commodity, that may be in creative, it may be in, the spectrum is wide. But the combination of sustainably living off of what you love to do, as well as contributing to the health of your community and your environment. Our primary mantra is mindfully made. And so we are applying this mindfully made approach to not only how we guide the entrepreneurs, but also how we make our own decisions, how we converse with our partners, how we just operate. So hopefully there'll be a multitude of small businesses and big business entities who support them, who are operating from this mindset of mindfully made.
Fantastic tagline, mindfully made. I just want to switch the conversation a bit to something that you raised. Who she feels she is. Tell me that. It is so fast. In Trinidad we describe things as you're fast. Well,
exactly.
Tell us about that.
It was actually born out of recognizing that Caribbean women operate in leadership positions across industries pervasively, yet not always visible. And the industry that I noticed is showing up a little bit more obviously towards the end of last year was in the conversation about Carnival and who owns Carnival and who leads Carnival, because I guess so much was evolving to pivot Carnival. But really it was a confluence of that and the rise in cases of women being abused or murdered, and not necessarily that it has not been happening, but a media spike, at least in the cases that we became aware of. The conflation of that brought a group of us together who are some of us living outside of the US and me living here. My main co-founder is Nakia Rivea, who's actually head of research at Twitter. So the combination of our skill sets and then the diaspora meets the resident community of women in Trinidad pushed us to forge something that really is conversation based for the time being, but also reaching into a bit more of a database approach of identifying where on the spectrum do we as Caribbean people recognize women in leadership? How do we define leadership, and how do we build capacity for leadership from a feminine perspective, not necessarily from a male-female perspective? So who she feels she is was turning a phrase upside down of acknowledging when someone steps out to be in a position of leadership. Let us celebrate that rather than define it as something somehow derogatory, and I think maybe this is a sum total of many of our experiences as women, Caribbean women in leadership, being put down for stepping into a space of authenticity.
There seems to be some linkages between Nudge and who she feels she is. What I'm hearing is that issue of turning up, showing our authentic self. And what worries me is, why is it that we seem reluctant to turn up as who we are? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I can only really speak from my own experience, and I know that I've been many times ostracized or treated as an outlier because of showing up as my authentic self. And those moments may not be the ones that everyone has seen, because perhaps because of my relatively public life since becoming Miss Trinidad and all these things, is there's this impression of being celebrated for standing out, but really the decisions that I made to get there, starting from choosing a track of studying art versus studying science, there's a sort of celebration of conformity that happens all the way back from primary school go through, and I remember distinctly around 15 standing up for something that in principle I disagreed with. And from that moment on, I became less eligible for certain accolades, So I learned from early that we get celebrated for and rewarded for conforming to norms, and we get discarded or disregarded or set aside when we show up in ways that are not as acceptable, but not necessarily because they are in any way rogue. It more so because you're not conforming. So I think there's just that sort of a reward system around conformity that perpetuates this reluctance to step out.
And how are we going to smash that? Because conformity will certainly not get us to the next level. We have to have far more outliers, but we need a lot more people with the courage to smash that mold. What is your advice to those persons?
And so to your point, there really is overlap between Nudge and who she feels she is in this regard. I think there needs to be a door opening from those who have made it to certain place to share what we call with who she feels she is, sharing the cheat codes, sharing the pathway, the blueprint to how we got to where we are, and being open source about it, not just getting there and closing the door to your success, and doing it in practical ways too, opening doors to job opportunities and livelihood opportunities to people who may not have the right resume, but show up, having the courage to, when in a position of power or you're in some form of a gatekeeper role, having your own courage to step out and give people opportunities, give people chances. And I think it's a multi-pronged approach, but I could just say from these two initiatives that I'm working on, because I am privileged enough to be in a place to have this type of conversation. There's a lot of gradual culture shift from the top down that I'm present to, and I think that on the flip side, it's for those who are looking for opportunities to have the courage to keep showing up despite being put aside, to keep showing up despite not knowing what the path is going to be. And that is a hard thing to do, but I can say from my own experience, it's ultimately worth it, much more so than conforming.
It is worth it, but the price you pay is tremendous. And I do acknowledge that you are paying the price, you have paid the price. You mentioned that we need to share the cheat codes. Are any of those available to us that you'd want to share? What kind of cheat code would you like to share with the persons who would be looking at this program and saying, wow, I want to be an outlier like her?
I wrote these down for my last who she feels she is live, and let me see what I can recall. One of them is something I started off saying at the beginning, is reaching out to those who you admire. And for instance, Mailing has been my mentor for over a decade. Staying in a place of curiosity, because there's, particularly I think with a certain young generation, a sense of, if that we come into the space knowing things, and really that doesn't serve you. I've learned so much by just sitting in conversation with the masters of my work, and so that's one. I think my mantra has been always risk being yourself fully, whatever that means to you. Of course, it applies differently to different people, but the risk is worth the reward, in my opinion. And I think, generally, finding your community, even if it's small, that celebrates you as you are. In fact, if it's small, it's almost better, because you can trust that this is an authentic space to be yourself. And I think the reward that feels like is something that will bolster you to keep going.
Yeah, yeah. And Anya, as we bring this interview to a close, what would be your parting comments that you wish to share?
I think in this very challenging time that we exist in, particularly where we are not in control of it all the time, I do think that a certain coming back to oneself and a really deep self-care around whatever practices that you have. For me, I've re-entered into my meditation practice, and I think that there has to be a reliance on something bigger than us, and an awareness that we are in this together and that we cannot possibly work through this independent of each other. And returning in some ways to the values of our ancestry, of working in an ecosystem, acknowledging everyone's value and that we will get through this, but only if we put down our individuality, but our individualism towards something more collective.
And on that note, thank you very much, Anya. A wide range discussion, a discussion in which we see an overlap between Nudge and who she feels she is. And really, for me, what I take away is that collaborative spirit. Be your outlier, but remember that we can't do this alone. Demming Chronicles. Thank you very much, Anya. We'll be back with you shortly. Welcome to Demming Chronicles, and on this segment, our guest is Fabian Carter. Who is Fabian Carter? Tell me.
Hi, Denise. Again, welcome for having me on your program. Fabian Carter distinctively would have been one of the leading persons at the Hyatt Regency, from its inception, from opening, into leading to some of the historic events like Summit of America, Showroom, and then as well as creating a certain environment within Trinidad and Tobago as it refers to customer service. Before my tenureship there, I have been spending time as well, in the alcohol industry previously, where I was at Angostura before. And that would have allowed me to understand certain mixologists as well as moving towards in terms of guest services. When I shifted to the hotel and hospitality industry, then I learned the devices that really dealt with culinary as well as customer care. At that time in 2007, the whole, as you would say, chronicle for event management and event planner, or the practitioners, as we will call them, had just started to rise. And I think it was very worthy that I was able to learn certain dynamics from international teachers that help to collaborate and embrace our Trini culture as well. So Fabian is...
A question. I hear all of that. You've been at the Hyatt, you've been in alcohol and beverage. Tell me, have you any stories from the people you have interacted with in those areas?
The good thing about events, as your earlier guest, Alvin, and they would have said, is that every event is a history. You know, it's remarkable sometimes, and it's a lot of planning and depth in terms of putting off or executing its work. And then there are some good memories, and then there are some not so good memories. In Angostura, because of me being in the industry for more than 3 decades, yes, I was able to move and meet a lot of practitioners that I learned from. Now, the good thing about meeting these people and them, Denise, is that you don't want to be like them, but you want to at least learn something from them. At Angostura, I think one of my favorite time there would have been with the Tobago Jazz program at that time when Angostura was affiliated with the CL Financials. And then I was given the opportunity of working closely with the performing artists there. And when I shifted into Hyatt, it became a lot more structured. You know, I was able to move from a bohemian outlook and then move into this full formal regal settings of wearing a suit and being professional, as well as choosing the choice of words and conversations I would have with certain guests and certain clientele to the hotel. Yes, I have worked distinctively with ministers as well as the ex-president of the United States, Mr. Obama, when he was here. I was able to meet him and serve him. Then we shift into the coming of the Queen. Again, Trinidad has had so many dignified historical events that, all events in itself makes it worthwhile, as well as it's a pleasure in itself. So those two distinctive events for my two previous employer, and Valley and Trinidadians, as you say, it's not about where you're going, but it's about the kind of contribution that you make at your work that will allow you to actually make your work feel worthwhile, as well as make yourself feel good or actually become better.
You've dropped two big names. You served Obama, you served the Queen. What are you doing these days with COVID?
COVID was a failure for Fabian Carter. Because when it had just started, it was on the verge of I had a successful carnival in 2020. I think it was one of my foremost best carnival. I left Hyatt in 2017, and I took time off between 18 and 19. But 2020 was when I had already, K-Code was existing 10 years before that. But 2020, K-Code was doing good. And then I got up one day and was told, stop. You can't do this anymore. And then I didn't know what to do, Denise. So I stopped for 2 months listening to all this news and then being shut down and locked down and being told, okay, this is our new norm. I'm accustomed with the word norm, but then I was even so much afraid to use the word normalcy because I wasn't sure how this would have applied to me. When COVID struck, I told myself I had to really readapt to certain things and I need to change a lot. So that's what I did.
And what did you change to? Because your area is entertainment, it is serving people, it is customer service. We're now locked down. So what did you change to?
The good thing about that is what you just said there, those two keywords, customer service, everything was stripped off. People lost their jobs, businesses were closed down. So I did the same thing. There was no way I could have picked up the phone or reached out to corporate persons within the government or corporate services, because at that time, my business involved doing events, food and beverage, as well as managing, and all that had stopped. So when that had stripped down, Denise, I said, you know what, Fabian, you need to take this off. So I picked up the phone and about, hello, I need help. I need work. And a few people listened, and then many people extended their hands. In the food and beverage industry, it was cut down tremendously to 60% non-existent. I would say 40% existence would have been trying to make the provisions for other corporate meetings, because remember, the good thing about food and beverage is that you must have food to eat. In terms of me doing the bar service, but that dropped completely. I was still on car because the hands full, so far less for me to go out there and sell and I was still a car package. But again, I am hoping that as soon as we resume to normalcy, that people really see what we have and people more or less diverse themselves to what is available. I am fortunate enough that one of my motivation would be my courage. And my courage came really from prayers, not every day, but my prayer for at least telling myself, you know what, let me do this. Because I believe, Denise, that many of our success comes from not when we wait, but from what we do. And even though it may seem little enough, it is something that you try. Because if you had tried at all, you wouldn't know. And that's something that we need to always develop.
To try. Fabian, tell me,
try.
Has it affected your price positioning in any way?
Okay, that's the question. You're a drop tremendously. I know. There is a job. I had no money. Um,
But it
and then it was
means that
hard. Yes.
sometimes a caterer will offer a particular range of meals at a particular price. Did you have to
Well,
reduce the prices?
well, the thing about COVID is that COVID changed the whole mindset of people. So the same way how when the prime minister would say, okay, we're going to lock down everybody want KFC on that particular day before the lockdown, I started to use that initiative. Now, Denise, one technique that the hotel industry teaches you, and my heart goes out there to all of the persons involved in the hotel industry as well as hospitality. Don't stop. Because let me tell you something. I was a part of that industry, and successfully as it may have been, there are a lot of things that we sometimes forget within our treats. And Denise, you're correct. As much as you want to offer a package that is luxurious or affordable, you have to know your worth. So, Denise, at sometimes the offers may be very luxurious, and then at some time the needs is very standard. Even so, sometimes has to be free. Because at the end of the day, if the people or the client or the customer doesn't see what you're offering, they will not really consider, no, let me call Fabian. Because of the COVID now, people are definitely safeguarding on who they're eating from or what they do because they don't know what are the mapping or the tracing contacts. So they depend on me now, which makes it more hard to make sure that I'm not interfering or having people third party or interfere with the food or making sure that people are not sick. I am thankfully that during this 18 months right now that I'm trying to move, 14 months that I have been trying to move with this COVID, I have been doing well, Denise, and I am thankful for that.
And what do you see of your future? Will you be continuing in the food and beverage sector?
Um, I have already shifted, and the food and beverage industry is getting harder as much as it's becoming competitive. I listened to Mr. Ramirez, and I could understand the disheartening of moving from a high scale income in terms of now settling for a small domestic income, what he's doing. I find it to be very commendable. Um, but I think he is definitely on the right track. And I think that many other practitioners and persons out there who may be watching, whether your business be street food, or even if you're working for street food persons or the other concessionaires, put yourself to value. Try to see how much you could work. The key thing is come back to nowadays is customer service. If you're not able to contact with the person whom you're selling the food to, they go come back. They have no way. So it's important now that it's either you be yourself, you offer something that's affordable, and you make sure and make it better than the next person, because otherwise they're going to say, you know what, we are going there now. Let's go across by the next person and buy that there. So I am hoping that should things resume to normalcy, I would be a part of the industry, yes, but as you would know, Denise, I think I have won my traits in terms of food and beverage, and I am now looking for something now that's a subside that whether it be managing holistically people or helping people manage their business, because I'm seeing a lot of people out there, um, especially food and beverage, they have an idea how to do customer service, but they don't really have an idea how to bring back themselves the motivation to business. So I'm hoping that I could probably be one of the instruments in helping that.
And what is your advice to any young person who's sitting at home and saying, listen, I want to work in the culinary sector? What is your advice to them?
Don't stay home. You need to get out there. Because if you stay home, it's not going to come to you. And you can't wait for a handout. The handout will come from God or may come from the government or from your friend, yes. But you need to go out there. Whether it be $10 a barbecue, you go out there and you sell it. Whether it be you're making dress or pants or designer wear, all these flam glam trendy artists and them, they have nowhere to go, so nobody buying that. Right? Switch to something else. People want to curtain and tablecloths and bed sheets because they want to lie down on something nice. My 3 words that I've learned during this pandemic is fail, because the world has failed us. It has told us we cannot go anywhere. It has put us in a place whereby our luxuries or our monies can't afford us to have certain things. And we need to learn from that. We need to learn how much we as an individual could impact if you are willing to grow other people as well as encourage. And then if you're willing to go out there and challenge yourself, because listen, all I can tell you is no, you know. And all I can say at the end of the day is, God, I thank you for today, oh Lord. I could try again tomorrow. And that's where your growing part comes, because then you grow not spiritually, but then you grow so courageously that anything come after you, you could deal with it. I do not see COVID ending soon. The world has changed. The businesses has become reluctant in supporting small business persons as well as people who are out there trying, because it's no longer affordable. It now becomes a risk. I would say to persons there, not entrepreneurs, small caterers, people who working with the food and beverage industry, people who working in the hotel industry, add value, because one day people are gonna ask you, you know, exactly what are you putting towards this, or what is your input in all of this. And if you can't really identify how much you're worth, nobody will recognize the value. So fail,
And on that note,
try to learn and grow.
what is that? Fail, try to learn and grow?
Yes. Because
All right.
as I said, we already have experienced failure. So let's try to learn from all of this, and let's try to grow from an individual to something that's a lot more sustainable for this pandemic.
That very, very inspirational note, we bring this interview to a wrap. This has been Demming Chronicles, Season 2. Thanks for viewing. Like and share us. Look for us on social media. Demming Chronicles. Be safe.